Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to use the Hard Surface Detailer add-on for Blender. If this add-on is of interest to you, feel free to have a look at the links in the description to download it. But for now, let's dive right in. Today we're going to take this simple block out of a ship to something much more detailed. And we will also see how the add-on can help you with creating better materials. Before using the add-on, you should prepare your geometry a little bit. Even though the script will still run if you have triangles and n-gons, details will only be generated on quad faces. You should make sure your topology is composed of quads wherever you can. For the high frequency style, rectangles are preferred over non-rectangles. And for the whole style, this also applies, but it's even better if you can have squares rather than rectangles. To simplify our workflow, I also prepared a map of all faces that would not belong to the whole style. This way, by selecting all faces, then deselecting the non-hull ones, we just selected the hull faces. This will be handy when using the add-on. Okay, now we're ready to use the add-on. I will assume that you already installed it. I like to start by applying the whole style first because it tends to be the one generating the less geometry, thus slowing Blender the less. Let's use the little trick that we set up before. Select all faces, then deselect the non-hull faces. I will now only keep the faces of the rear part because I have another idea in mind for the plating of the front part. Bring the right side panel into view by either clicking here or pressing the N key. Select the Detailer tab and choose Hull as the style you want to apply. Select your material and click OK. Here I chose an irregular distribution of 8 plate separations on the Z-axis, and I've been a little unfortunate on how the distribution turned out on the non-square faces on the front part. So I'm just going to play with the random seed until I find a distribution that is good enough. There we go. The front hull now. First, let's select the corresponding faces. For this part, I want the plates to be separated mainly along the y-axis. This is why we set the X and Z axis to 1 so that they don't generate any borders for these axes. I also set them to a regular distribution to make sure that the Voronoi points for plates division will be placed in the center for these axes. Please refer to the documentation if you would like to know more about how this works. The y-axis, on the other hand, should have more than one Voronoi point and should be non-regularly distributed in order to be influenced by the random seed. For now, the whole plates are separated by a straight line, but I think this is a bit boring, so I will add some jittering to get a messier look. Never forget to play with the random seed to see different variants before choosing one. That should be it for the hull. Now let's add some of the holding structures. The structure style is pretty straightforward, so I won't explain it in details. Instead, we're going to skip right to the more interesting high frequency details. Here we're going to add some life to the ship by adding lights. Some of the faces created will later be emissive in the material, so make sure to select a dedicated material for this. The interior lights will have the same material, but the initial insets will be a bit different. I also wanted to crank the number of iterations up a little and play with the random seed to get better content. For the antennas, we also wanted to use the high frequency style, but this time we will exaggerate the detail's depth by multiplying it. Let's play again with the random seed until we find something that suits us. It looks like we got lucky here. We'll keep this one. Now this is the last style we will create. We're going to generate the high frequency details for machine areas. We first select the material associated to these machines. This is supposed to be a very busy area, so we're going to choose a high depth multiplier and a high number of iterations. This looks busy enough, so we're going to stick to these settings for the other similar areas. This time we're just going to add some inset before proceeding. It didn't work as well in the rear, but let's just play with the random seed until we find something. This is what the ship looks like with the materials I have previously created. We will now see how the add-on helps you with creating such materials. For the machine areas, the material is a simple metallic principide BRDF. It's mixed with a dirt layer to help bring out the geometric details. The dirt is located in crevices detected by an ambient occlusion pass, all vanilla blender. The interesting part here is how the color and roughness of the metal varies from one detail to the other. The add-on generates a new UV set for your mesh called mono UVs. For each of your high frequency detail, a random UV coordinate is allocated. You can use these coordinates however you want. In our case, we use them to get a value from a noise 3D texture and use it as a color and roughness. Here's another less subtle example. For the material of the light areas, the same method is used, but instead of setting a color, it picks between a metallic or an emissive material. The whole material is a bit more complicated, but the use of the mono UVs works the same. Each hull plate received a different UV coordinate, and this can help us for our material. Here I used it to induce small tint variations between each panels. One more time, let's have a look at something less subtle by using the value to modify the color hue. Well, that's all you need to know to get started. Don't hesitate to get your hands on the add-on, it's only $9 and you can find a link for download in the description. I'd love to see what you can create with it, so don't hesitate to share.